Hi everyone, this is our second episode of the AI in retail in QBCS. I'm here again with Gabor, and today we will discuss different topics of how AI can be used and what are the exact use cases and what are the tools that we can use for this deep dive. Gabor, what do you think? What are the main elements that we can capture here, discover everything, and detail here one by one?
Based on our last podcast episode and what we'd like to describe here today is the main use cases in retail that we have identified so far for exploring in our subsequent episodes in deeper dives. At the moment, we have four use cases that we would like to kind of deep dive. The first one of which is in chronological order, the kind of help that AI can provide with existing tools today in the documentation processes within retail business organizations for business processes that can then be elaborated into design documentation, process documentation, and use case analysis as needed. And the reason this is very important is simply that a lot of retail organizations today do things in a certain way they have done for a long time in the past, but have very little standard documentation in-house, either because they have existing systems that support those processes, or it's simply inside the head of the teams and they just kind of know how to do things. It's inherited. Oftentimes there are training materials available for team members that join in. But oftentimes what we have seen is that those training materials don't quite cover an end-to-end process flow for all the different things that a retailer does, or that they're out of date, or again, focus just on very specific roles. And as I have mentioned, we will explore for retail organizations that would like to go through a process documentation exercise, what the existing tool sets are that are available on the AI side. And then the entire objective of that exercise, again, is to be able to feed that output into other subsequent AI tools and take sort of further steps in the adoption of existing AI technology capabilities to build out processes, efficiencies, systems that support those, and at the end of the day, AI agent team members that can actually run some of these processes, as we'll explore. So in terms of tools, talking about the documentation side of things, what kind of things do you see out there that could help such an exercise?
Yeah, there are multiple tools. The most common tools is like a basic LLM, like ChatGPT or any other like Perplexity or Claude can also be used for creating a structured documentation. If you have different use cases or if you have different ideas, it will generate you a very good document with a feature list that could be used in the future. It could be very useful if we can generate, for example, a PRD, a product requirement document, based on these inputs. So if a retailer can collect all the activities that they want to have and ask, for example, ChatGPT to generate a PRD document based on that one. Of course, you can also add a lot of other information that is needed for a perfect PRD document, but you can also go with a high-level PRD one, and then you can feed it into other systems or other tools, applications, platforms like V0 or Replit or Lovable or Bolt. These applications are capable to create mockups and rebuild new applications from nothing. So I think that will comes to our second use case, how these highly customized applications can be created from scratch. And we will see all of these applications that is usable for this, and what are the steps, and what is the end product. Is it usable or not? What is the pros and cons for this? If we discuss this, I think the third step or the third use case would be to check the agents itself. So if we have an application that is written from scratch, we will check how agents can use these applications. And for example, use it as an autonomous way to create certain things, certain activities, and automate these activities. Gabor, can you mention some kind of tools which can be helpful for the retailers? So what kind of applications that we can talk about here?
On the AI side of things.
Yes.
So we talked briefly as at the beginning, the first use case, creating documentation for existing processes, and you have mentioned several tools, LLMs, ChatGPT, OpenAI, that can be extremely instrumental to assist in that process. In terms of getting input data, as you have mentioned, existing documentations, etc., can all be fed into these systems for providing them with information that they can then build documentation from. Also, if there are business interviews going on to gather more info from the team, those can be recorded either via remote tools like Zoom, Teams, etc., or simply recording conversations. And then AI can be extremely instrumental in transcribing those conversations that used to be a painfully slow manual process in the past, and not only transcribe that information, but structure it, create action items, and already start working those inputs into a proposed output document that can be, of course, reviewed and revised based on feedback from the human participants by the AI itself. So that's one area that is exciting to witness and participate. Regarding applications out there that you can use to then take the process documentations and use ChatGPT to build those into business requirement documents, even beyond process descriptions, actual design documents, system design documents. You've mentioned a few tools that can consume those documents and actually build applications with a front end for the users to use. Can you mention a few of those again?
Yes. There are different platforms, and for example, there are V0, Replit, Bold, or Lovable. These are different platforms. We need to feed them with a prompt. So the first thing, we need to describe what we want. We also need to attach the document, this process design document that we discussed. And based on the document, they will find out the best user interface. They will create it from scratch. They will create the front end and also feed the data for mock-up purposes, so some demo data. Before these platforms, it took days or weeks basically for an IT team to create all of these front ends. And right now, with a few prompts, you can do it by yourself, and this is very, very exciting. And if we go further from application creation, we will discover the world of agents. What do you think? What kind of agents should be built based upon these platforms? What use cases should we discover first?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think one of the most exciting topics for retailers today is that, given that they have a number of functions, especially in the headquarters, that people are performing. For example, a merchandiser, they do certain things. They are responsible for curating assortment in the planning phase, deciding what products are sold in which stores for the departments that they're responsible for. And then once, especially for seasonal items, the season begins, they're also in charge of making sure that purchase orders are placed in time, the goods arrive to the right location, the right quantity, and then making sure that those locations are selling at an optimum retail price, and ideally don't run out of stock. You don't want to overstock either. So one of the questions that comes up from a retail business management perspective, given the growing intelligence and trainability, if you will, of AIs, is could an AI agent act like an individual or a person in a certain specific role within the organization and perform the business functions and processes associated with that role? And for the sake of auditability, let's assume that these agents are requested to use existing ERP solutions and platforms to perform their job. So are there AI agents that could do this, that we could explore?
It's one thing that we should definitely explore. To do this, there are some platforms for building agents like this, like N8N or Make, which are very good platforms, very usable. We need to explore the capabilities of this. Of course, these are using different LLMs, large language models, like it can use GPT, ChatGPT, it can use Claude, it can use Gemini. We will check this one by one for each section, what is the best. For example, there will be multiple use cases. So for example, one LLM model would take one task, break it down into little pieces or subtasks. Another task would basically gather all the information from documents. For example, create from the user guides. It will create the different actions that the user would do in the user interface. Another LLM would, for example, if there are multiple subtasks, it will aggregate everything back and do another action and summarize everything. And if there is any ask, that it will provide back to the results back to the user. So there are different use cases. We try to explore these one by one. We will check all these LLM tools, make it some evaluation what LLM is good for what, in what purposes, and we will also check the agent workflows, either N8N or Make or any other agent workflow platforms. I think if we can achieve this, we will have a very good overall picture of the current situation of AI. What do you think? Is there any other use cases that we can also explore or go in more details, specific details, but that you can imagine? Or is there anything that we need to dive into, for example, the data itself?
Well, yeah, I think there's one more use case we have mentioned that we would like to deep dive, but just one more quick question about the AI agents capability, just out of curiosity. So in terms of technology today, is there already tool sets available that can actually push the buttons in a UI interface like a user would and walk through complex processes like the users do?
Yes, that's a good question, and there are. One browser automation tool could be a tool called Browser Use, and there's another one called Skyver, and we would like to test this again one by one, and we would like to see that what is better, which is more accurate than the other, which has more reliable in a live scenario. So that's a good question, and yes, we will check these out as well.
Yeah, no, that sounds very exciting, which leads me to the final use case we would like to explore, which is, I guess, a bit more complex. And one could ask the question, if we have AI agents that can do complex things based on their own understanding and analysis of data, would we still need a UI? Would we still need an ERP system? And a lot of folks would argue that we do, for the purposes of accountability and auditability and controlling, etc. But are there use cases and tools available where AI agents, for example, could perform complex tasks and come back with recommendations or decisions? For example, could AI agents look at data autonomously or being fed and make, for example, complex pricing recommendations or decisions, or make inventory allocation decisions?
Yeah, so I think that makes our fourth and last test cases or use cases. Basically, we will check the complex analysis based on data, based on the input data, and then we will we can also get some recommended instructions from LLM. It would be a bit more complex. So I think in this case, we need multiple LLMs to work together. And one LLM, I can imagine that, for example, one LLM could do one half of the answer, and then another LLM would evaluate this answer and put it back if the provided answer is not correct, or not in good format or it's not enough, and then reiterate the whole thing. So there are a lot of different scenarios, and we would like to dig deep into these and check that are these processes are good enough. If there is any solution out now, can we use this into these complex scenarios or not? If not yet, then what is the barriers here? If yes, how? So that's our main goal, to understand all of this and get the big picture of all these agents world.
Sounds good. No, that's really exciting. I mean, those are I think burning questions on everyone's mind. How far can AI go and perform business functions autonomously? So this will be a really exciting series to watch and see what we learn. Thank you for the answers, and see you in the next episode, where, as we have said, we will be deep diving together all the technology possibilities on process discovery, documentation, and structuring, to then take further into building actual applications for human and AI users.
Exactly. And if you like this content, and if you want to have some notification on these specific AI discovery sessions, please hit the subscribe button and like the video.
Yep. See you next time.
See you next time. Thanks.